Good morning, evening, or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the American Culturist, the show where we unapologetically celebrate the greatest civilization the world has ever known, the one built on Enlightenment reason, individual liberty, and Christian moral foundations. A few days ago, we got some good news that I think a lot of people have been hoping and waiting for a long time. Attorney General Pam Bondi was finally fired after 14 months at the helm of the Justice Department, and not a moment too soon. It's honestly kind of wild to me that she wasn't fired long before now, but I'll take a late victory over a timely one any day. I think it's safe to say that us over on the right are tired of soft, ineffective, lackadaisical, and quite frankly, incompetent behavior from people in key positions when the right is in power. The left has never been shy about maximizing the effectiveness of their power to further their agendas, yet the right abstains from it like it's a hand grenade only their actions are responsible for pulling the pin on. And this timid approach to wielding power effectively by the right has created ripple effects within our country that are going to have terrible ramifications if this process continues. It's no surprise to anyone who's been paying attention that we've seen a growing number of domestic terrorism threats coming from left wing groups such as Antifa, communist cells, and radical socialist networks. If you spend any amount of time on Reddit, Blue Sky, Facebook, well, actually, pretty much any social media platform, you've probably seen all sorts of leftists discussing the need to take violent action against conservatives and government officials. They aren't shy about their willingness or openness to commit acts of violence against those they disagree with. And many times, these are severely depressed, mentally ill, radicalized people in our society who are the end state of the Democrat leftist worldview. Now, some people might be dismissive of the way they talk online and chalk it up to sore losers in the wake of being effectively locked out of political power, but I can't help but think how much worse it'll get if or when they get political power back and have the ability to have their way. A common thread I've noticed is the dehumanizing language used to describe conservatives and the America First movement. By way of broadening the definitions of terms like Nazi, racist, fascist, and others to encompass literally anything and everything they disagree with, they've been demonstrating their willingness to demean people with difference of opinion to nothing more than nouns that need to be eradicated for not kowtowing their preferred pronouns. You might have noticed the increase of violent attacks have traced the frequency and intensity of language used. According to DHS data between 21st of January 2025 and the 24th of January 2026, 182 vehicle attacks were carried out on ICE and CBP officers, with 68 being against ICE alone. That's a 3,300% increase in 1 year. In March 2025 alone, Tesla reported 48 separate incidents of vandalism and arson. By early April 2025, the total number of reported attacks across the US had surpassed 50, according to Fox News analysis, with incidents confirmed in at least 9 states involving arson, gunfire, and vandalism, often accompanied by anti Musk and anti Trump graffiti, which almost always included swastikas. Dozens of social media videos surfaced of them attacking normal citizens, spray painting or keying swastikas into the sides of Tesla cars before wiping human feces on them or breaking out the windows or slashing tires. I can't help but find the irony that the experts at identifying Nazis are the ones tagging citizens they don't like with symbols for rapid visual identification after profiling them as a group. Makes you wonder who the real Nazis are. Other instances, such as the Prairieland ICE detention center attack, the Turtle Island Liberation Front bomb plot, doxing and threatening conservative podcasters, and plots discussing attacking critical infrastructure, have made it apparent that these people want to do serious damage to the United States and people they disagree with politically. And that's not even mentioning the trans shooter epidemic. And while Pam Bondi and the DOJ brought charges against roughly 13 Antifa and far left group members, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of these people who are all on board with the methodology and ideology of political violence to achieve forcible change and overthrow the government. If Pam Bondi was serious about enforcing Antifa's designation as a domestic terror organization and enforcing existing domestic terrorism laws, These people should be up at night waiting for flashbangs to be launched through their windows before being scooped up by the FBI's counterterrorism task force. They should be terrified of even being associated with these groups. They should be getting rounded up and charged with sedition, conspiracy, and whatever other charges can be applied, because we cannot have a decent society where these miscreants are allowed to plan and operate unimpeded by law. But they aren't. They're online saying the same things, they're plotting the same types of attacks, and every time something happens that ignites the next powder keg of outrage, they're perpetrating violence. And it'll continue until they're dealt with. Ultimately, cracking down decisively on these extremists is the lowest hanging fruit the DOJ can pick, and a bare minimum for restoring safety and order to a society plagued with violence. And they, Pam Bondi, have completely dropped the ball in this area. The effort to remove violent people from our society who are an active component of politically motivated violence has been almost non existent and passive. We can hope that the interim Attorney General and next Attorney General can fulfill the role more effectively and cut the legs out from under these anti American groups who are hell bent on using whatever means necessary to achieve a communist America. Now, let's turn to a development that could prove very significant for the future of this administration and for the 2028 presidential race. Vice President JD Vance has just been placed in charge of the nationwide anti fraud task force. This is a major assignment, and if handled correctly, it gives Vance a highly visible platform to demonstrate competence, deliver tangible results, and build the kind of executive record that voters are going to look for leading up to the 2028 presidential race. But success here will not be easy. And the recent track record at the Department of Justice makes that painfully clear that if current things remained as they were in the DOJ, JD Vance and the Anti Fraud Task Force was going to have yet another hurdle to get over. Under Pam Bondi, the DOJ repeatedly fumbled high profile cases in ways that should serve as a cautionary tale for anyone serious about restoring accountability. James Comey was indicted for false statements and obstruction related to congressional testimony, only for the case to be dismissed when a judge ruled that the special prosecutor had been illegally appointed. Letitia James was indicted for bank fraud and false statements on a 2020 mortgage, and that case was also dismissed on the same exact procedural grounds. An investigation into Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, collapsed when a federal judge quashed the subpoenas. The case against John Brennan stalled out after a career prosecutor determined it wasn't a strong enough case. A grand jury unanimously rejected charges against the Seditious Six. Investigations into Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and Lisa Cook either produced nothing or simply faded away. And these were just the headline cases. Multiple probes into Epstein's co conspirators were quickly shut down. Voter roll lawsuits against multiple states were dismissed for lack of evidence. Time and time again, cases were brought with great fanfare only to collapse on basic procedural errors or weak construction. This is exactly what the right cannot afford to repeat with JD Vance's anti fraud task force. For this effort to succeed and for the success to be maximized, every case the DOJ brings has to be bulletproof. Evidence must be airtight, prosecutors must be properly appointed, and indictments must be brought in a timely manner, not allowed to linger and lose momentum. The American people have watched the Justice Department used as a political weapon against conservatives for years. We don't want more theater, more dismissals, or more excuses. We want results that actually stick. If Vance can lead this task force with discipline, precision, and a genuine commitment to equal application of the law, he will not only help restore the trust in federal law enforcement, he will also demonstrate the kind of steady, results oriented leadership that sets a vice president apart when the country eventually looks towards 2028. The conservative movement has waited a long time for the Department of Justice to function as an instrument of real accountability rather than selective protection. Vance now has a meaningful opportunity to show that this administration can deliver where it counts, and we can't afford to make the same mistakes. Too much is riding on the success of this administration. Pam Bondi's tenure is the perfect example of what happens when we put the wrong person in the wrong seat at the wrong time. We don't need more theater, and we're tired of excuses. We need a wartime attorney general who understands that we are not at peace. We are engaged in a serious struggle to preserve the rule of law and a civilization that depends on it. Whether it's Antifa cells firing on ICE facilities, radical networks plotting bombings to bring the power grid down, or a broader campaign of intimidation and fraud that JD Vance's task force must now confront, the standard must be swift, decisive, and legally ironclad action. The right cannot afford to continue being a passive placeholder for authority, while the left is on temporary timeout to plan their next wave of political conquest that they will absolutely see through to completion. The right needs to take power seriously, execute objectives effectively, and demonstrate they are the antidote to radical leftism. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time. God bless.